Okay, on Rethink Real Estate today, we're going to go through needs versus wants, the financial conversation that you should have at the very beginning of the listing to understand not what they would take, but what they could take. There is a difference, guys. Not what they would take, what they could take. The conversation that you can have at the very beginning of your listing to really determine, are these people a good use of your time? Welcome to Rethink Real Estate. My name is Ben Brady, and this is a real estate podcast aimed to deliver sales strategies, marketing tips, and business insights from industry experts and myself to build a listing-focused business for the future. Let's get into it. I want to make sure that this is as quick as episode as I could possibly do, because it's a pretty simple and straightforward point. But that being said, as everybody knows, I'm relatively long-winded. So it was a question that somebody asked me the other day, is that how do I know, or how can I evaluate whether or not this seller is going to be somebody that, is going to meet the marketplace? Like, how do I make an evaluation of that at the very beginning? And I honestly don't believe that you can make that evaluation at the beginning. I think that people change, or depending on the relationship that you have with them. If it's a past client you've done several transactions with and you've got a great relationship with, you're probably going to get an element of transparency that you might not normally than if it's a pretty cold client that you've been referred, or so on and so forth. So there's one real question that gives me the power in order to sort of understand, but it's also the power to continue to bring that conversation up with them. Now, we speak about the 24-hour meeting. If you're not familiar with the 24-hour meeting, this is a meeting that you have with the seller to set all the good, the bad, and the indifferent within 24 hours after they've signed the listing agreement. It's to go over, low price and feedback and all these different things. And I'm not going to go through it here today, but there's one element of the 24-hour meeting, which is at the very end of it, which is called the financial conversation. And the financial conversation is basically this, is that Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I know that we want $1.5 million for your property, okay? And we're going to do everything in our power that if it's out there, we will get it for you. However, it's really important that I have a very clear-cut understanding of the financial objectives out of this here today. And I know we want $1.5 million, and not would you take this, but could you take this? What I mean by that, not would you take this amount, because I know that you wouldn't, and I wouldn't allow you to, because I'm not going to undersell your real estate. But could you take, I don't know, $1.2 million if it turned up? Well, Ben, I'm never going to take that. There's no chance I'm going to take it. No. Not would you take it, but could you? Is there any financial limitations that are in play at the moment that I should be aware of? Because I'd love to provide you with a net sheet on a few individual price points so that we really understand exactly what we're trying to achieve out of this. So not would you take it, because I won't let you take that. I'm not going to put my reputation on the line of you accepting way less for your home, but could you take it? Is there any financial limitations or goals that I should be aware of now at the very beginning of our relationship and us getting this property sold? Okay. Now, folks, let's turn that into somebody that you might know, is that, hey, or you've done a few transactions with, or it's a referral partner, is that you can simply phrase that, is that, hey, are there any financial goals that I should be aware of at the very beginning of this that you're trying to achieve by selling your property? Yes, well, we want to buy the other property. Yeah, no, I know that that's the primary outcome, but is there some financial limitations that I should be aware of? I know you want 1.5, but could you accept 1.2 if it's out there? Not that you would, just could you from a financial perspective? Oh, no, we couldn't move on that. Well, could you move at 1.3? I know 1.5 makes this completely comfortable and it makes everything fine. And I'm going to do my best to get there, but I'm just trying to ascertain and understand from the very beginning, where are the limitations? Right? Now, the other element that you can do is dive straight into giving them net sheets, okay? If you're unfamiliar with what a net sheet is, go to your escrow officer, go to your title rep, go to whoever it is. You might even have your own individual program where it breaks down and gives an assessment of all of the costs that are in play. So if I accept 1.5, by the end of it, I've probably got somewhere in the vicinity, it's about just over 1%. So let's just use round numbers to make it easy, is that I'll probably end up with 1.32 in my pocket, because it's going to cost me $180,000 in order to sell my property after commissions, after this, that, and blah, 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 blah. That might be too expensive, but either way. So long story short is that having this conversation at the very beginning of them to understand what their financial limitations are is really important for you then in the first week or two to understand, oh my God, this is a bad investment of my time. Because the one real thing that I think that is important that you understand is that when should you walk away? I think you should walk away after 2 or 3 weeks after you realize whether the market has responded to their number and what they really need versus what they want, okay? is being adjusted. Like the want, is that adjusting more to the need? And if it's not, then I think that you have a decision to make at that point, because there's no point spending more and more and more and more time. Now, this is probably something that you get to make a decision on as an agent, actually. I shouldn't say you shouldn't. You get to make a decision. Like I personally, I don't have the mental tenacity to keep a listing for 6 months. I don't have the mental tenacity to keep it for 2 or 3. Okay. I probably have the vicinity of 6 weeks before I feel like I've not done my job and I'm being defeated and I need to move on to something else, because naturally my desire in order to get them the right outcome, okay, is probably not there anymore. If we're going to check in on ourselves, right? I know agents that will hold on to a listing forever, and I think that's an injustice to a seller, because they get so complacent, okay, and the seller then gets resentful towards them as well. Now, it might be a different relationship, and you've got to judge each one as it comes up, but just be real about it and make sure that you're very self-aware. Being self-aware in these situations is an absolute superpower. There's no doubt about it. Okay. So want versus need, that original financing conversation, not would you take it, Mr. and Ms. Seller, could you take this amount? Getting the understanding of, hey, what are your financial goals out of this? Now, the reason I bring this up is because you will be unbelievably surprised at some of the answers that I've had when it comes to asking this question. Really surprised when it comes to asking this question. Some of the things that people have mentioned that you can't see on title, you might say, oh, well, you only owe 1.2 million on the property. No, medical debt that you can't find that isn't attached to them or the property itself. It might be credit card debt. It might be car debt. It might be student loans. It might be all of these different things that are intrinsic things that play an effect as third parties in the situation. The wrong time to find them out is in the middle of a deal. You've got to make sure that these conversations are continued to have. Now, I'm not saying in your first conversation with them that is going to come up, but I think that it's an opportunity to continue to dive in to their financial goals in all of this. And I think you'll be surprised. We've got to have a tiny bit of faith in humanity, even though sometimes that wanes for me, is that you've got to give them the net sheets, and we've got to go through the financial objectives at the very beginning of all of this. So do that at the very beginning of the process. It gives you permission to then continue to talk about it as it goes on. Well, hey, look, I know that we spoke about this in the very beginning, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, but I just wanted to make sure that there's no new financial objectives that have come up along the way that I should be aware of now, because the wrong time to find them out is in the middle of a good offer. Please make sure that we're having that conversation, want versus need, because it really gives you an understanding of where everything sits in the very beginning of things. Hopefully it helps. So about 75% of our audience hasn't liked, followed, or subscribed to our podcast. It would mean the world to us, and it would help this podcast more than you know to expand our reach if you were to like, follow, or subscribe on any of the platforms that you're watching or listening on. Thanks again.